What up, beautiful, beautiful? What's up, what's up, what's up? Welcome to my channel, people. This is the Infinity Midwife once again. How are you? How are you doing today? Are you beautiful? Do you feel beautiful? Do you love on yourself on a daily? What's up? So this is me, the Infinity Midwife, coming at you once again with another video. So this new series that we're in, we're talking about the collective shadows. We're talking about, now, yes, I'm gonna keep that title, collective shadows. Some people don't like it. Well, you better damn like it anyways, because I'm gonna keep it. So other than that, you guys, I hope y'all are doing well. We're talking about the collective shadows as it pertains to how we've led generations and generations, how we've led a whole collective, how we've led humanity to come to this place of stagnation, this place of hurt, this place of healing others or hurting others. Well, we're not healing there, we're getting there, but of hurting at others, or how are we allowing hurt in our lives, and why are we allowing it so much? So I'm here with you, the Infinity Midwife, to help you unravel, to help you come out of the shadows and just be beautifully you, because you deserve it. You are worthy of it. You are loved. I love you. If nobody told you that today, you are loved. So we've started talking about pleasure. The last video I spoke about pleasure, and in this video we're gonna dive deeper into pleasure. I feel like this society, or the collective, or humanity as a whole, these past thousands of years, we've been living in this space of hurt, right? The opposite of pleasure is pain. And these polarities, pleasure and pain, I feel like it's something that has been ongoing for thousands and thousands of years. It could have been something we've agreed upon at some point, or it was just an era that we needed to go through of, when we are devoided, right? Devoided, DEVOID, the word devoided. We've been devoided of pleasure, or the pleasures have been have been hidden, or have been disenfranchised, I want to say. Well, I don't know. Overall, pleasure is something that we've been keeping it a secret, keeping it in hiding. We as a people, Black people, people of, African descent, or indigenous people, I feel like pleasure has always been something that you keep to yourself, something that you hide in your closet. We do not talk about pleasure. We do not feel free to talk about pleasure. I feel that we've been put in a space where we are more comfortable talking about our pain or our struggle than talking about what is pleasurable. I feel like it has been a mandate for millions of years, or thousands of years, to be acknowledging more of our pain, of our struggles, rather than to come out with what is pleasurable, what brings us true pleasures. Because again, if you've listened to my past video, I did talk about unworthiness. And us as a group of people, we carry heavier loads of unworthiness than other groups of people. Because again, not only through the programming that we've received, whether it's from religion, education, culture, traditions, I feel like we've been walking around for hundreds of years with that heavier load of unworthiness, like feeling unworthy of being part of the high the hierarchies of this world, or the elite of this world, or and I feel like, this era that we're stepping out from is an era was an era of illusion, right? Was an era of deceit, was an era of pain, was an era of bondage overall on all levels of creation. I feel like we are slowly stepping out of that era to come into an era of more truth, of less polarities, more equilibrium, of a balance. I feel like we're going into an era where there's going to be less power struggles, where there's going to be more authenticity, where there's going to be more individual power, for a better, more balanced collective power. Or, I feel like we're stepping out of these big era of shadows where everything was separated. We were looking at ourselves through separations of good and bad, dark and light, evil, good, good, not good, good, bad. So, I think that all these things that we've experienced in the past are, that's why I'm doing the work that I'm doing, by having these conversations of, looking at how we've been led in our lives. What were the programming? What were the beliefs that we kept holding on to? What were the education? So, when we become adults, we feel freer to maybe not eat the type of foods that our parent gave us as growing up, as children. Maybe we try to do things different. We try maybe to let go of certain things that we feel were not as liberating or was not as empowering, as to maybe, in our parents' generations, or how our parents did things. I feel like, yes, when you become an adult, you should feel the right. You should feel the right to allow yourself to be who you are at your very core. But we're not being taught that. Actually, I feel that, a lot of us, including myself, we grow up to be big children in adults' bodies, right? But we keep the same concepts of when we were children. We keep the same traditions of when we were children. We keep the same beliefs, values as when we were children. But I think that there should be this evolution of when we become adults, right? And I feel that is why in those groups of people that held on to those rites of passage, where you literally go through this evolutionary process, or this rite of passage, where you go through some difficult or challenging things, or challenging phases, or challenging situations, to actually break that shell of childhood, or break that shell, come out of that shell of, having to be under the wing of your parents, or having to be in this certain way because you were growing up. And then through that rites of passage, you become the adult or you step into your power of being the adult, the liberated one, the one that survived, or the one that thrived, or the one that went through that rites of passage and now has come on the other side. But I feel that in many societies, especially the ones in which we live today, we have not went through difficult things of life. Or if we have, we are still very much carrying that childhood essence of, being attached to all things. Not necessarily the playfulness of childhood, which I believe is very healthy to keep, but more so regarding ourselves as taking on responsibilities of, making the choices that is an alignment with who we are at our very core, whether it is totally different from our upbringing, whether it totally varies from from our religion, from our belief system, from our values. I feel like we should come to a space where when we become adults, we change skin. We let go of the past, and then we thrive to become something that is more true to our hearts, to ourselves. And so I feel that, in the era that we lived in, it was pretty much a continuation of being big children in adults' bodies for the longest of time. And those people that broke out of it were looked as crazy, or were looked at as, the exception that made it out of, they probably were exiled, or they were probably seen as the abnormal one. But I do feel that we are stepping in a space where we will be we will be breaking free from those chains and those old ways of doing things. And I'm part of the change. Are you part of the change? So, we're talking about pleasure today. Pleasure, I feel, is one of the topics or the subjects that is not. And when I talk about pleasure, literally, guys, I'm not only referring to sexual pleasure. I mean, it's a big one, right? Because it's one that is being promoted out there. It's the one that, especially in the Western world, it is one that is being, most exposed, which is sexual pleasure. One thing I do want to say is religion, education, culture, traditions, all succeeded in taming down what is pleasure, more so over what is woman pleasure. And how come, when we're children, we're allowed to play and do all these things, these playful things. But then when we start becoming adults, I feel that the pleasure is it becomes more or less something that is given to the man and that is taken from the woman. There are many, many traditions out there and cultures practicing this, where woman is quickly being put in a certain box of, you're not, whatever pleasures you felt when you were young, it's off limits as you grow up. Or, it's handed over to the one that's going to be responsible because you're leaving your house, or, you're leaving your parents' setting or environment to become someone else's toy. Like, I feel like for women in general, this concept of owning your own individual pleasure becomes totally obsolete as soon as you come of age, or you step into your puberty, or you become a woman. It feels like, well, now you're not so much entitled to pleasure as much. Or, if you want to, especially sexual pleasure, you need to have some sort of environment or, authority over you to supervise how you're going to be pleasurable. Or, if you're going to be pleasurable sexually, then you need to do it in a very private setting or private environment, which is absolutely not true, which is a lie. Not only a lie, it's an abomination. It's an abomination. How is it that we want to thrive, to become, to be the most evolved species, but yet some of the basic things, basic needs that is in our birthright, which is pleasure, is totally being taken out of the woman, or out of our rights, and and it becomes someone else's authority, or it becomes someone else's power to have over us. Like, who agreed upon that? And I feel like religion played a big part in it. In all three big religions, I feel that this liberty of pleasure is still in the hands of someone else's dictates, or of someone else's authority, or someone else's power over than your own. And you can be coming from the Jewish faith, you can come from the Christian faith, you can come from the Muslim faith. It is all an agreed thing. It is something that has been agreed upon, that woman cannot be pleasurable on her own. It is something that has been put in them books. It is something that has been agreed upon. And one of the reasons I feel like it's been agreed upon is because if a woman comes into the knowing that she is pleasurable all by herself, then what is the man's use? Or, what becomes of society where men have all the power and authority? It becomes totally obsolete, right? But we've convinced generations of people through the books, through these texts, through these practices, that women need to be controlled, and her pleasure needs to be controlled, however you look at it. And that's why I feel like for the longest time, women having the liberty to be passionate about themselves, or just passionate about whatever it is they want in life, was seen as abnormal. It was not the norm. In the 50s or in the 20s, if a woman wanted to become a writer, that was like unheard of. Like in the 20s, or in the in the 1900s, like if a woman wanted to be a writer, like, no. Like, get ready to become a housewife and then have children. Like, what are you talking about? Like, we're talking about here in this western part of the world, And if we're not talking about, these matrilineal groups, or these matrilineal indigenous groups where women were in charge of their own pleasure, I feel like a lot of patriarchal groups or patriarchal societies were in agreement where women were kept in boxes, or were kept in these ideas, or in these concepts of, a woman is dangerous once she comes in contact with her own pleasure, or she feels the liberty and the freedom to have her own passions, or to be in touch with her own essence, her own pleasures, her own passions, like her own everything. And I feel that now we're stepping in a space where, there's all these liberated, or these movements where women are expressing themselves. And I feel like we're coming out of an extreme, but we just need to not go to another extreme. I think that we just need to find the right balance of, women owning their power, and then also having the other half, which is men owning their own powers as well, in a healthy way. Because there is no point of stepping out of colonialism, slavery, all these bondage energies, all this bondage era where women were being put in bondage, and then men had this perception that they were superior, or white groups had this knowledge that they were superior. Well, it's a perception. It's not a truth. It's a perception. So this bondage era was something that kept us in boxes. Us women, children, anyone that felt that they couldn't be or express their uniqueness to the world were being put in a box, and we were the ones that were in hostage. We were the one that was being held in hostage in order for that era to thrive. But I feel that we're getting out of that, and that we just need to make sure that we're not stepping in an era where now it's going on a flip side. It's, you know, us exercising bondage, women exercising bondage over men being our hostage. I feel like we have to be careful not to go through that extreme, because extremes are just going to be reflections of extremes. And we just don't want to be in either or. We want to be in a balance where, you know, we're getting rid of toxic masculinity. We're getting rid of that era of bondage, and that we're stepping in this healthier era where both essences are free to be themselves, and or whichever essences it is. But, you know, there's this liberty that is being exercised, that is being expressed, and that is beautiful in a healthy way. And that's where I feel like we should be going. Because here's the thing, we're coming out of an era of bondage, and we need to recognize that as well. Men were being put in bondage as well. They were being kept in a hostage where they needed to exercise violence, even if they didn't want to. They were put in a position where they needed to exercise authority, authority that was very derogatory towards women, even when they didn't want to. So we need to also look at the other side where, you know, men were being placed in these positions of power, and maybe they did not want to. You know, when we're looking at these different aspects of what is bondage, who is putting who into bondage, who is in bondage, you know, we need to look at the other side as well, you know. Like, maybe those that were being put in hostage, you know, they were the victim. They were the one that coped with, you know, with all the violence, the silence, the darkness of being kept in that cage. But then we also need to look at who was the one putting those in hostage. Were they really enjoying it? When you put everyone in the cage, who do you actually have fun with? You know, who, like, are you really exercising power? Is that what is the definition of power is? You know, are you necessarily or really enjoying this? If there's no more dialogue, if there's no more communication, if you're totally in this space where, you know, at the top it becomes lonely. So what are you really doing? Like, is that power? Is it really? So those are the types of questions we need to ask ourselves. So yes, pleasure is something that has been seen as totally promiscuous, you know. And I feel like us as parents, or as a whole, as a collective, as Black parents, as Black adults, or indigenous, or people of color, I feel like we need to question ourselves. Like, why are we not allowing pleasure into our everyday? Right? Something as simple as, you know, taking a walk, that brings me pleasure. So, or, you know, masturbating brings me pleasure. Why can't we agree that we all have the right to access our own pleasure, and to own it, and to be okay with it, and to be responsible for it as well, right? Because, you know, when we have that freedom to exercise and to feel certain pleasures, we should also have that responsibility of saying, well, you know, if I'm going to exercise my right to this type of pleasure, then let me just make sure that I'm doing it in a way where, you know, I'm taking full responsibility for it. So I'm being responsible for it, and then I'm therefore not hurting anybody in the process of me exercising my right to this pleasure. You know, it's pleasurable to me, it may not be to you. So it can be totally different from an individual to another, but it's just that it needs to be voiced. We need to have access to that. We need to have spaces where we can sit down, in groups of people and just be talking about it. What is your pleasure? What is it? Can you describe it to me? What is pleasurable to you? It can be sexual, like it can be totally creative, like it could be totally unique. Okay, maybe people find pleasure in looking at or being in an environment where the bees are buzzing. Like somebody can find total pleasure in this while someone else would be irritated by it, right? So it depends. We're all different and unique, and we need to have those conversations. It can start in a family setting, it can start in a couple, or it can start just you by yourself, journaling about what brings you pleasure. Is it teaching? Do you like just standing up and having people around you listening to what you have to say? So you better have things to say, right? Like, is that pleasurable to you? Are you the type to instruct people and you find great pleasure in that? Are you the type to share things with people, bring people resources to, being the middleman or the middlewoman? What is pleasurable for you? Is it that you like to be creative and then touch things and then turn them into something else? Is it using your voice to maybe sing or speak, or just use it to transcend a message? What is it? And I feel that we're all unique in that sense. And when we can pinpoint, it could be one thing, it could be many things. But when we deal with our pleasure, I feel that it needs to be something that is unique to you. And then maybe it can also be something that took your entire life to figure that out. I feel that now that we're stepping out of that era of bondage and hostage, I feel that we're coming into an era where there's going to be this need to validate individual pleasures, whether that pleasure is. Because it starts when we're young. It starts when we're children. It starts in the playground. It starts there. It starts when the child becomes in tune with their emotions, their senses. It starts there, because when their basic needs are met, then we're taking it up a step to where the child now is more in tune with their emotions. They know what they like. They know what is cold, what is hot. They know what is pleasurable to them. For instance, I know that one of my boys, he loves cold. Like he finds joy in being in a cold environment. Maybe it may be pleasurable to him and it may not be pleasurable to me. But knowing that, I'm not going to close him up to that option. I'm going to make space for that, for him to experience that type of pleasure, because I know he finds pleasure in it. So it needs to start with, at some point, ourselves, us the adult. Write down what is pleasurable to you, whether it's in a sexual context, a creative context. What is it about yourself that you find pleasurable? Is it your hair, touching your hair? Is it looking at yourself in the mirror? Is it you tasting something in your mouth? Is it you just touching your hands? Do you find pleasure in touching your hands? So when we are coming into that space of identifying what is pleasure for us, our individuality, us experiencing life in this 3D reality through our senses. We have many, many senses, not just 5. So once we can recognize what is that type of pleasure, then we can start in our environment to notice, oh, that person finds that pleasurable or not, or that my child finds that pleasurable or not. And then when we can do that, we can come to a space that we respect one another's pleasures. Okay, you maybe have some weird pleasure that I think that is weird, but to you is not, and that's okay. If we can have that respect for one another, then we can come to a place that, hey, your differences are just as beautiful as mine. So that was my ends for today, guys. You know. Like, share, subscribe, whatever all these things are all about. So if you found something valuable in it, take it and go and fly with it. If you find that you need to share that video with someone, do it. If at the end of the day they find pleasure in listening to me. All of that to say, have a good day, guys.